Hands up, whose parents ever told you to treat those the way you would wish to be treated? This is humanity, and humanity is a powerful thing. It can change lives, it can change politics, and it can change everything. And in a week that would have divided most, we saw nothing but humanity in New Zealand following the terror attack, changing the way we include and accept different races and religions, and inspiring people across the world. We live in a big, complex world full of diversity, and we can choose to let that unite us or divide us. Today, I'm here to talk to you about how we can earn and maintain our social license using humanity. Earning a social license really isn't that complicated. It all boils down to the human relationships our businesses and industries have and the trust capital within them. But who's the primary sector earning trust with? Well, it is every single New Zealander in New Zealand that is reliant on the resources we use. And it is every single consumer across the world that consumes our products. Today, their bullshit radar is on high alert. They are craving authentic experiences, and their values are their new religion. The key points I'm going to cover with you today is that social license is all about trust. We need to fail better if we want to avoid losing trust. And stakeholder engagement is how we earn and maintain trust day to day. Trust is what is the foundation of social license. And if you think about the fact that trust needs to be earned, then isn't trust like a currency? And therefore, we could treat our social license like a trust wallet that we fill in the good times so we can draw on it in the bad. There are varying degrees of trust in our social license, though, and I'll run you through Dr. Robert Boutillier's social license model to give you an overview. So to go from complete withdrawal of social license to acceptance, you cross the legitimacy boundary. And this is where your value connection starts with your stakeholders. It achieves you a passive acceptance under the watchful eye of lobby groups and NGOs. And to go from acceptance to approval, we cross a credibility boundary, which is now where you're being perceived to be living your values authentically. And the perception is the key word there. To go to the ultimate, from approval to psychological identification, we cross the full trust boundary. And this is where you've engaged so well with your stakeholders that you've created a sense of ownership with them of your business or your industry. Because trust is so hard to earn, but incredibly easy to lose, how we fail is vital in maintaining our social license to operate. Our natural instinct when we fail is to go into fight or flight mode. It is not the natural place to find the strength and integrity and empathy to say, sorry, we got it wrong, and here's how we're going to do better. We rarely spend long enough in that uncomfortable space to learn anything from our failure. Instead, we get defensive and we avoid taking accountability, using the sorry, not sorry approach. But like having a Band-Aid ripped off, your failure is a wound to your business and it needs time to air to heal. Our primary sector is a great example of failing badly. And I believe it is important that we reflect on the past 10 years so that we can learn from it and move forward and do better next time. This is my version of events of how I think we came close to losing our social license. And you can come argue with me afterwards, but right now I've got the mic, so I'm going to use it. So bear with me. So post-war, don't worry, you won't be here for too long. Society's values were all about economic security. So industrialization happened. Once that economic security was achieved, society's values evolved and changed into higher-level moral values, such as the environment. The problem was, though, that industry is a big beast and they weren't listening. They weren't yet there with their fingers on the pulse. So society demanded action, and industry went into denial. They weren't ready to take accountability for their role. So society had to strengthen their victim statement in a term called framing, and this is where the lobbying started to happen, such as the Dirty Dairying campaign. Industry got angry because they felt unfairly attacked, and so they attacked back. Government stepped in with regulation to realign industry with society's values. And industry bargained because they realised if they weren't at the table, they were going to be on the menu, and they needed workable regulation to survive. Society felt validated by that regulation and began to push for regulation in other moral areas, such as animal welfare and health and safety, but they also began to innovate and find solutions of their own. Industry reached depression because they were feeling increasingly isolated from society and they felt demonised. Further regulation happens as it evolves and gets refined to be more workable for everybody, and also a response to the new values that were being pushed by society. And then industry reaches acceptance. So they realise that they have a role to play and they're a part of the problem, but more than that, that if they want to be in control of the future of their industry, they need to take a leadership role. Can anybody identify a pattern here in how industry responded? I've bolded and underlined the clue. Sorry? Yes! Yes, it is. Woo. So it's the 5 phases of grief, right? And I just think that is incredible that a whole industry can respond the same way one individual responds to losing a loved one. And I think it is a valuable lesson for us to acknowledge that so that we can recognise our behaviour in future when we get challenged by society and correct our pathway. It can save us years of heartache. But to earn our social licence and maintain it day to day is about meaningful and consistent stakeholder engagement. If we understand who our stakeholders are and what they value, we can identify the value gaps. And this is where the trust breaks down and our social licence starts to wane. This is where you can work to realign. But I've got a video here which does a really good job of explaining what I'm trying to tell you, so
let's back up a bit. Say your company makes widgets and business is booming. Naturally, people start to notice you. One day, you drive to work to find protesters at the company gates, claiming your widgets use a toxin that is bad for the planet. Soon, more stakeholders hear about the protests and decide to join the campaign. Suddenly, you're in the news for all the wrong reasons.
Yikes.
So what do? You're the bad guy, so maybe you call the authorities, arrest the activists, and tell your story, explaining the many great things your company does and how ridiculous those crazy hippies are. Problem solved, right? Not so fast. In the end, it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. The cycle of demonization and finger-pointing rarely leads to solutions, and almost always to gridlock and a tarnished brand. To overcome this cycle, we at Future 500 advocate for stakeholder engagement. Technically, it's the systematic and proactive integration of feedback from those impacted by your organization's operations. In practice, it's all about humanization. When we acknowledge our shared humanity and admit that none of us is perfect, we can begin removing our masks and working together to find common ground. Stakeholder engagement means building trust, even between those with very different views, from right to left, corporate to NGO. It means knocking on doors before problems arise rather than after. It means listening more than talking. It means communicating with humility rather than boasting. And it means engaging over and over again to continue raising the bar in a way that's better for your stakeholders, your planet, and your bottom line. Now, it doesn't always have to be formal. After all, most friendships aren't built in the boardroom. And having a little fun never hurt either. When we stop building walls and start building bridges, we create a space for solutions that are systemic, innovative, and lasting. So the next time you find protesters at your gate, consider this. Maybe you shouldn't have a gate in the first place.
So it's about bringing everything back to humanization and how you engage with your stakeholders. Don't waste your resources assuming you know what's best for them. Engage with them first and collaborate and come up with something lasting. What I hope you've taken away from this talk today is that without trust, you don't have a social license. When you fail, do it bravely and with empathy to avoid losing that trust. And it's about meaningful and consistent stakeholder engagement to maintain your social license day to day, because without stakeholders, you don't have a business. I'd like to thank the stakeholders in this room and the stakeholders that made this event happen, because I think it is so important that we take time to take a step back and look at where we're heading. So congratulations everyone for being here and making this event awesome, and I hope I've added some value to your experience. Thank you very much.